Hi, my name is Pravina Ravi. I'm a senior in political science here at Purdue, and today I'll be giving a talk on why your vote matters. Voting is by far one of the most impactful things you can do for yourself and your community. On a macro level, it is so easy to think that you are just one person and that your vote doesn't make much of a difference. I challenge those who hold that stance to reconsider. As someone who is a non-US citizen that holds green card status, or in other words, permanent residency, I'm not eligible to vote. I've lived in the US for 20 out of the 21 years of my life, and I'm currently going through the very slow process of becoming a naturalized citizen. There are 13.2 million other green card holders in the US, and 8.9 million of them, like myself, are eligible for citizenship. Those who want to become citizens will not get the privilege of voting until they go through the lengthy naturalization process that can take anywhere from a couple of months to even a couple of years. Overall, that is a lot of people who don't get to vote, who don't get a say in who their representatives are, even though they may have been living in the US for practically their entire lives. In cases like my own, your vote represents your views and those alike who cannot vote. This includes millions of people living in the US, whether they are under 18, currently incarcerated, or non-US citizens. Your vote always matters, and the truth is some elections are razor thin. The 2016 presidential election is a great example. The margin of victory for President Trump in the swing states that he won was less than 1%. Even if you're in a state where it's likely that one of two major presidential candidates will win because it's a safe state, there are other races on your ballot that are not necessarily set, and this can be where your vote makes a huge difference. As I said before, I am not eligible to vote. However, this has not stopped me from being civically engaged in my community. The past 2 years, I've interned with Lum Immigration Clinic. My work includes helping permanent residents who are applying for citizenship by assisting them with their N-400 applications and ensuring their information is correct before submission. Citizenship classes are another way the clinic helps permanent residents with the naturalization process. As an icebreaker, we ask clients what excites them the most about becoming a U.S. citizen. A common trend I've noticed is that a lot of them say that they are excited to vote in the near future. Through various student political organizations I am in, I've met several students who don't share the same enthusiasm when it comes to voting. Students can sometimes take their privilege to vote for granted. The past couple months, I've been working with Purdue Votes, a coalition dedicated to increasing Purdue's voter registration numbers on campus and increasing our voter turnout rate. As a student director, one of my goals is to have every eligible Purdue student registered to vote, independent of political affiliation. Additionally, the coalition emphasizes voter education and empowers students with resources that help in answering any questions they may have about voting. This year, with the global pandemic, there have been more challenges getting people ready to vote than ever before. Voter suppression is not a new concept. Voting rights have been under attack nationwide as states pass various voter suppression laws under different guises. Ultimately, any law that leads to significant burdens for eligible voters trying to exercise their most fundamental constitutional right can be considered a form of voter suppression. In addition, denying certain groups from becoming eligible voters can also be considered voter suppression. Since 2008, states across the country have passed measures to make it harder for Americans, particularly people of color, the elderly, people with disabilities, and students, to exercise their right to cast a ballot. These measures include cuts to early voting, voter ID laws, and purges of voter rolls. Last year in my home state, the Texas legislature outlawed polling places that did not stay open for the entire 12-day early voting period. The politicians that pushed for this roadblock defended their decisions, saying that they are raising barriers to election fraud, not ballots. Several campuses across Texas felt the effects of this law. For example, Austin Community College had tapped into its own funds to set up temporary voting locations on 9 of its 11 campuses. In 2018, those 9 polling locations logged nearly 14,000 ballots cast by full-time students. That's a lot of students that now have to go out of their way to find a new polling location off campus. This is just one example of voter suppression at the state level. However, voter suppression can come from the federal level as well. As I mentioned earlier, naturalization is a very lengthy process. Permanent residents are only eligible to become naturalized if they have held a green card for 5 years. In order to start the process, applicants must fill out a 20-page application. Next, they must pass a background check, submit any necessary supporting documents, pass a civics and English test, and complete an interview. When I applied for naturalization back in June, I paid a fee of $725. This fee is now $1,170. Finally, after jumping through all those hoops, they have to take the oath of allegiance at a naturalization ceremony. This is a formality, but you are not truly a U.S. citizen until you complete it. Before the pandemic, 63,000 applicants took the oath of allegiance each month. USCIS closed on March 18th this year because of the pandemic, and it gradually only started reopening on June 4th. About 126,000 individuals who have already been approved to naturalize are still waiting to take the oath of allegiance. In other words, these individuals will not be able to vote in the November presidential election. Current regulation states that an applicant must appear in person in a public ceremony, unless such appearance is specifically excused. The Trump administration has argued against remote oath ceremonies, however. There has been bipartisan support in Congress to end citizenship delays by permitting these ceremonies to be held remotely. In conclusion, U.S. citizens need to be reminded that voting is a right as well as a privilege. Voter suppression is very much still an issue in 2020. And if you are eligible to vote, you should vote. But even more importantly, everyone should be civically engaged in our community.